Chapter 14. The 1-Minute Tsunami. The only juniors in the department were the periodically posted interns who were more of a hassle than help. They were mostly concerned about their attendance. But the culture in medical college inculcates a default feeling of responsibility and care for the juniors, whosoever they are, whatsoever they do. So I did all I could to help them in whatever way they wanted, whether learning or proxy, and in return the love and respect that I got from them helped refuel me for my ongoing struggles. It was one such day. I was in the OT finishing off the skin closure of a laparotomy. One nursing assistant and one OT technician plus the anesthesia resident were inside. At that moment, the senior OT sister in charge barged in, followed by a chunk of 6 to 7 girls and boys clad in OT dress, complete with cap and mask. It was evident they were interns, getting entry into the OT for the first time. There they stood, a pack of hooded ninjas, with only the eyes visible from the apertures formed between the cap and the mask, huddling timidly into each other. What a sight they presented, these timid ninjas! I smiled besides myself at the oxymoron. The head sister instructed them fiercely, "Do not touch anything here, you lot. It's all sterile." They moved away from the table stat. She turned to me. "Manav sir, I've been asked to bring this group of intern batch to you. Could you please give them an overview about the surgery and instruments here?" "Most certainly, Sister Ji. Thank you," I answered. I got into the senior mode now, forgetting my own pathetic condition for that moment. "Are you all posted in surgery?" I asked as they wished me good morning, continuing with my work. One of the boys answered, "No, sir, these two are not," pointing at the two girls who looked up slightly as if confirming they were convicts, not being in the batch officially posted. "They are our friends and wanted to come along, so we took permission for them too. Their surgery posting will start next month," he clarified. I nodded in understanding. It was again a culture of seniority at the medical college that juniors never looked straight into the eyes of the seniors, unless absolutely necessary as a mark of respect. "This patient here, Mrs. Sarita, 35 years female, is a case of intestinal obstruction, having post-Cox multiple distal ileal strictures and gross proximal ileal dilatation with mesenteric adenitis leading to obstruction." I started detailing. We removed the pathological part of the ileum with adjacent cecum and did an end-to-end ilioascending anastomosis. If the biopsy report confirms the diagnosis post-op, she will receive antitubercular therapy for at least 6 months through DOTS. This would significantly improve the prognosis and ensure a nearly normal, healthy life in future for her. "How did you come to the decision to do a laparotomy on her, sir?" one of them asked. On admission, she presented with complaints of acute severe pain in abdomen and distension, not passing flatus motion with excessive greenish vomiting and negligible oral intake since last 2 days, I answered. She gave a history of occasional colicky pain in abdomen with nausea, vomiting, decreased oral intake, progressive weight loss, and persistent low-grade fever. I gave every detail for their easy comprehension. I added, "Read Cox abdomen and obstruction from Robbins and Levin Bailey's today itself when you go home. Also go through the ATT part from KDT or whichever pharmacology reference book you prefer. Then make concise notes of it. Follow this patient up daily in the wards and understand the treatment modalities prescribed for her. On the 5th day, help in her wound dressing so as to understand the healing process," I instructed. "This way your learning will be complete when you correlate things collectively and retention will be permanent. It will decrease your burden and stress just before the exams," I went on. By this time, I had started dressing the skin wound. I said, "It's for those of you who aspire to take surgery in future. The skin sutures should be placed as perfectly as the surgery itself that you have performed, as also the dressing on the wound, which should be clean and cosmetically favorable." Remember, I looked at them, the surgical wound dressing is the signature of a surgeon. You won't want to have your name written in an unsightly manner, would you? I smiled and walked to the head end of the patient, confirming if she was fine, before moving towards the instrument trolley. The staff was readying the patient to be wheeled out into the post-op. I asked the interns to gather around the trolley. I started explaining the names and uses of each surgical instrument kept there. The dissecting scissors, Alice forceps, the Babcock's forceps, BP knife and handle, types and sizes of surgical blades, retractors, and so on. I held one of the instruments and said, "This in surgery is the most important instrument, the Kelly's clamp or our very own artery forceps." I went on to explain its functions and types and said in the end, "For perfecting your surgical skills, you should be able to handle the instruments in both hands with equal ease. For perfecting your surgical skills, you should be able to handle the instruments in both hands with equal ease and dexterity, most of all the scissors and the artery forceps. For instance, you should be able to open and close these forceps with both your hands and with highest degree of precision and minimum hand movement, because it's in very crucial places that we need to work with them." Let us see how, I said, taking the artery forceps in my right hand, demonstrating the correct way to hold it. Then I opened and closed it in turns very deftly before taking it in my left hand, aiming to do the same. I closed it confidently with the peculiar repeated clicking sounds as it closed and latched completely. Following this, with utter casualness and confidence, I tried to open it, expecting it to release stat. But it didn't budge. I tried again. Nothing happened. I looked at it and tried a third time with all my might. It did not budge at all. The atmosphere became awkward. The sister in charge laughed aloud, easing the tension. The girls giggled under their masks. Who says men do not blush? Even the hardcore macho men are no less vulnerable, and I was one of the most human of men. I blushed. I looked up. They were fidgeting, looking everywhere else other than towards me, except one. One pair of eyes looked straight into mine. She was one of the two outlaws not belonging to the official batch. She was smiling. I could tell that just by her eyes. Her eyes held mine prisoners against my intent. It was neither a demeaning nor a mocking smile. It was a smile that comes when we see a toddler showing off his antics and falters, but we don't want him to realize that we have seen the faux pas. The eyes bore into me through mine. I felt bared, as if she could read me, my thoughts, strengths, weaknesses, my mind, everything. Big, bright, and ethereal, the eyes were very beautiful. There was a birthmark, like smudged kajal, at the lateral canthus of her left eye. Black mark it had to be because she didn't wear any eye makeup. I was helpless, as if I lay captive under the spell of an enchantress. She took mercy on me at long last and looked away. But I wasn't spared. As I was about to turn my head, something again caught my eyes. This time it was something dancing from her earlobe, a tiny dangler. It wasn't a ring, but a small intricate ear jewel that swayed playfully as her head moved. The earlobe, thankfully not covered by the OT cap, was nearly transparent and very clean, with that earring playing havoc dangling from it. She tossed her head again and I was shaken into the reality. I was flustered. I returned to myself in a moment, gained composure, and then laughed meaningfully, accepting the miss. I said, "All right, I too am not immune to Murphy's laws, am I? But you all take care to demonstrate with better forceps when you are with your juniors." We laughed. I asked them politely to leave. It was late and I had loads of work to complete. They thanked me heartily and turned to leave. On my way back to the patient, I dared to sneak a peek at them, hoping to get the glimpse of that 1-minute tsunami. But I wasn't gratified. I saw the back of the last of them leaving.